Well, hello everyone, it's Colin Archibald. In this video we're going to set up a machine for Android programming, and the machine that I'm using is a Windows 7 64-bit machine, and it's a new machine. Well, it's new to Windows 7, so there's not very much stuff installed that will keep me from forgetting to do something. So we're setting up to do Android programming on this machine, and I'm going to go, and the first thing I want to do is to get the Java Developers Kit. So if I just Google for Oracle JDK, eventually we'll find this page, and we want the SE, the standard edition. Android development uses the 1.6, or later versions of Android use 1.7 of Java, and we're just going to go and get the most recent one. So as of today, the most recent Java SE is version 8, update 5. So I'm going to go and get the JDK, and I'm using the 64-bit. So I will accept the license agreement, and I'll go down here and look for the 64-bit version. Some people are confused by the 86 and the 64. The 86 version of things is the 32-bit version. That's confusing if people don't have a long history of knowing about the Intel 86 processors. But we're going to go and get this one, the JDK 8U5 Windows x64, and I'm just going to save that on my machine. So I'm going to edit out the places where you just have to sit and wait for something to happen, and we will come back when we have this exe downloaded on our local machine. So the download is complete, and I'm going to open the folder where this download happened, and here is this executable for the JDK, and we will run that to install the Java Developers Kit on this machine. I'm just going to allow all of these defaults to happen. So don't do anything really unusual, like try and install things on a different hard drive. If you allow things to happen in the default way, you're asking for less trouble later on, and we will go and confirm that this installation happened. You can certainly do Android development in 32-bit, and if you have a 32-bit Windows machine or a Macintosh or even a Linux box, you can do Android development by installing the appropriate versions of the JDK and the development environment. We've had a lot of trouble with Windows 8, and we've had a lot of trouble with doing this on Linux systems. So if you're brave and determined, then you can go in that direction. What we've had pretty easy success with is Windows 7. So this install will take a little while, and I'm just going to let it happen, and then we will confirm once this is finished that what we expected to happen has happened. And when that finishes doing the install, we'll get to this message, and it encourages us to go and look at documentation and read developer guides and so on. And I'm just not going to do that. So let's go and look in the machine that's in front of us. So on the C drive, we have a folder called Program Files and a Program Files x86. So on a 64-bit machine, we have these two program files, so we can run 32-bit applications and 64-bit applications. So the 64-bit things are under program files, and we should have a folder now called Java. And here we have the JDK 1.8.0 with a point release of 5. Just get the most recent one. And it should kind of look like there's stuff in there. We also get a Java runtime environment for version 8 of Java. So the first step is completed, and we're going to now go and get the development environment for Android, and we're going to use the one that's based on Eclipse. Okay, so let's go back out to the web, and we're going to go to, well, I know this one. I don't have to Google for it. We're going to go to develop. Is it develop or developer? Develop.android.com. And I didn't get it right. It was developerandroid.com. That's okay. Now we're going to look under develop. And tools. So here are the developer tools. The old way of doing this was quite problematic. You had to go and get an Eclipse and install Eclipse, and then go and get the Android developer tools plugin and the software developers kit for Android. And it was a tripping point enough that they have decided that we can do this all at once. Let's click on download. So under tools, when you click on download, here's the offering of the Sdk ADT bundle. So the software developers kit and the Android developer tools, which are all bundled together. And that saves us some problems. So I've read all of that, and I'm going to go and get the 64-bit version for this machine. This is a very large download, 510 meg, and I'm just going to save it in my downloads folder. And it says that will take about 10 minutes. It may or may not. So we'll pause here while that happens. So that download has completed, and let's go and see what we got. Well, that's encouraging. It's more than 500 megabytes. So where are we going to put it? When I'm working on my own personal machine, I like to make the paths as short as possible, so I tend to put Eclipse right on the C drive, right on the root of the C drive. And when we're doing this in a lab setting, if you have an administrator setting up a lab, things within Eclipse have to be changed by the users of Eclipse. And that can cause problems if the students using the labs don't have access to the things that have to change. They don't have permission to change things that are on the root of the C drive, for example. So we're going to put this in my documents. So this is a compressed a zip file, and we're going to extract everything in there, and it will ask us to find the destination. We don't want to unzip it into the downloads folder, so let's go over to the My Documents folder, and we will uncompress it in there. And again, this is really quite large, and there's no reason for you to watch this 1.2 gigabytes decompressing. So that extraction is complete, and now we have in my documents this ADT bundle Windows, and we also have a folder called Eclipse. So here is how we're going to run Eclipse. We're going to double click this. So you might notice that we did an extraction of the zipped files. We didn't actually do an install of anything. So if we run Eclipse from here, it looks a little bit different from the standard Eclipse, and they give you a different icon. If you have more than one Eclipse installed on your machine, you need to be a little bit careful about not using the same workspace and two different versions of Eclipse. Yeah, all sorts of confusing things happen. So I'm going to make a folder for my workspace. I'm going to put it where I can find it easily. So in my documents, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it Android Workspace. There's nothing special about the folder that you use for your workspace. It's just a folder. And I'm going to say use this and don't ask me anymore. Right? We'll ask you every time you launch Eclipse. And the first launch takes a little bit longer than the remaining ones. You can contribute to the statistics if you choose to. I don't have a problem doing that. So, if you're comfortable with Eclipse, this should look pretty familiar to you. So, it looks like we're making progress. So we're in Eclipse, and we have a few things up here that are different from a usual version of Eclipse. So the first one is called the Sdk Manager, and let's look in there. So this is the Android Software Developers Kit Manager. Your inclination when you get here is to just say, I want all of them. I'll take all of them. You don't want to do that. It will take a very, very long time. So each of these versions of Android has a different software developers kit. And there's a lot of them. And then there's some add-ons, and we will use some of the add-ons, but we don't need to go and get any right now. So my best advice here, instead of picking all of these and waiting for, on my machine it would be more than a day for them to download, I'm going to pick two. So these are the two that I want us to pick. 2.3.3. which is also known as API 10. And then let's pick a recent one. Let's pick 4.4.2. So we're picking one from the old days. This is the era of the first Kindle Fire, and then one of the very newest ones. And we're going to allow these tools to update. They get updated very, very frequently, and it's a good idea to keep up with them if you can. So it says we're going to install 16 packages. So let's go ahead and do that. You have to accept the license. So this also takes a fair bit of time, and you'll see by how long it takes why we only decided to do two. If we decide to do them all and just leave it running and come back tomorrow, something might have messed up, and that we would wind up starting again, and it would be another day setback. So if this messes up somehow, and we hope it doesn't, we haven't lost a day, we've lost maybe an hour or two. So it does take quite a long time, and you can watch television or something while this is happening. And finally, those two SDKs finished, and we get this message warning us that we should do two things. We have to close the manager and reopen it, and in Eclipse say help, check for updates to see if the Android plugin needs to be updated. We can't ignore that one. So we updated the SDK, and we may now have to upload the ADT to a corresponding version. So the ADT is the Android Developer Tools, which are the plugin to Eclipse, and the SDK is the Software Development Kit. And those two things are different, and they have to be in sync. If they aren't in sync, then you get some pretty unusual errors. So let's close the manager window. Let's do what they say. So we're going to close the manager, and we're going to go to help, check for updates, and see what's there. So here's help, check for updates, and it will run out and see if any of the plugins in Eclipse need to be updated. This is a new version of Eclipse, a new copy of Eclipse, so there's only this one possible thing that could be updated. If you're getting the feeling that the development in Android is a little bit fragile, good, no updates were found. You're right, it is a little bit fragile, and sometimes things stop working, and there's a lot more overhead when you're using Android than when you're just using the development tools from one company. So if you're just using Oracle stuff, you're just doing Java, there's not as many things that can go wrong. But, so, we're going to conclude that we have a development environment set up now, and I'm going to go and figure out how to pin this onto my taskbar. Doesn't want to do it. And we will make a test of this. We really need to test the development environment. So make the Android equivalent of Hello World and see if we do have a working setup. So now we think we have an Android development environment set up. So let's make a very small Android application. So I'm going to say File, New, Android Application Project. And I'm going to call it Hello. So in the past, the package name, you're not supposed to use example. We should put something here that is unique to our company. So I'm going to use workingconnections.com, and you use it backwards. Your company's internet domain name. And let's just do the easiest possible thing and allow everything to default. It decides it wants to call the entry point the main activity, which is fine for this one. We just want to see if we have a working environment. And it seems to have worked. We have our our project is called hello, and we have all of this stuff which we're going to have to eventually understand, and the source code, the actual Java code for this tiny application. The default is that it says hello world on the application. So this is a very good sign. It seems to be working so far. And now let's see if we can run this. So I'm going to choose the project and right click on it and say run as an Android application. We should have a problem here someplace. Down here it says that it's launching. Here's the problem. No compatible targets were found. Do you wish to add a new Android virtual device? And we do. We want to create an Android virtual device. I'm going to say no though. So go up here. Remember where we looked at the Sdk Manager and we went and downloaded the two SDKs. The one to the right of that is the Android Virtual Device Manager. So we're going to create a device for running this application on. So it's a virtual device is different from an emulator. It's all of the source code that would be on a piece of hardware. So it's an actual software device, which is different from an environment that pretends that it's the device. Let's pick a standard one, a Nexus 3.7. Oh, the target for the device. Let's say that this is 4.4.2 API level 19, and the CPU is going to be the ARM. Okay, so I put this one back up to 512 meg. I wanted the size of the SD card to be lower because I'm not really sure if it allocates RAM for that. I'm assuming now that it doesn't. So let's just say OK, and we've made remember this part, an API level 19. API 19. Okay, so we have an AVD created, and we're going to start it up. And I'm going to edit some of this out because it will take a fairly long time to launch this. So when you turn on your Android phone, this is what you get when it's starting up. And what is it doing? While we look at this stylized Android, it has to load all of Linux, well, the reduced Linux that is the base of Android, and then it has to load the Java virtual machine, which is called the Dalvik virtual machine, and then it has to load all of the other classes on top of that. So this is one of the reasons why it's not such a good idea to try to do Android development on an old machine. You really need 8 gigs of RAM to do this in a reasonable way, and even then you spend some of your time waiting. The good news is once we've launched this machine, it can sit around. We don't have to redo this every time we decide to run our application. It's as though this was a real machine that we've created in RAM, and it can sit around there and we can keep using it over and over, installing our applications and seeing what they do and debugging. Okay, so I'm editing out some of the time that I spent waiting for that, and eventually it comes up and we have a running Android device. So let's go back to our, remember what we called it, Test Device API 19. Let's go back to Eclipse and say run as an Android application. And the console window now says something more encouraging, that it found a target emulator and it's uploading the Hello project, and it installed the Hello project. The APK is the Android package, and that was successful. And then it started the activity, the main activity, and it opens up by asking us, do you want to monitor the logcat? And I always do. So the logcat, we'll talk about that as we go along. So now I have to find my machine again. Where is my emulator? Here it is. And it is running our Hello World application. So, success. We have installed the JDK, and we went and got the bundle for Eclipse and the SDK and the ADT, the Android Software Developers Kit, and the Android Developer Tools, which are all bundled into this one thing that they give us. Then we went out and we downloaded, using the Sdk Manager, we downloaded 2 SDKs for Android, 2.3.3 and 4.4.2, which are levels 19 and 10. 19 and 10. So every time there is a new release of Android, we get a new API level, and it gets a new number. So that's all we wanted to do in here, was to just make sure that we have a machine set up that can build the Hello World. What else did we do? Well, we made a Hello World, and then we created a virtual device, an Android virtual device. And we verified that our simple Hello World application is running. That's a significant step. It's not easy to get everything working in Android, and that took me, well, it took me a few hours. Very good. I'll see you next time.